Welcome to the Why Not podcast with me, Janet Hawkins. In a world where everybody always asks why, I'm here to ask, why not? I'll be breaking down the mindsets of guests as well as my own in a bid to find out what makes people say, why not? Today on the podcast, we have Janet Hawkins, owner of the Blessing Bookstore, which recently moved online due to COVID. Janet speaks to me today about growing up in a family business. Janet grew up in a family business, so you would seem... Janet grew up in a family business. Janet is also my auntie, and my grandparents ran a family business, so she grew up around watching a business run. Today, I talked to Janet about coming from employment to self-employment, beating a recession, and how to get a fiver from a stranger. Great episode. This is a great episode. There's so many insights here regarding mindset and the fear of rejection and so many other things. So I really hope you enjoy it today and just relax. Yeah. Today we have Janet Hawkins. So Janet is my auntie, and she's also... Today we have Janet Hawkins. She's the owner of the Blessing Bookstore. She's the owner of the Blessing Bookstore, which recently went online due to COVID. She's actually also my auntie. And my grandparents, so her parents, She's actually also my auntie. And my grandparents, or her parents, ran their own business back when she was growing up. So it would seem logical that she would go into business herself. Now, initially, she was a chartered accountant before opening the bookstore. And she talks to me today. And today, I talked to Janet about coming from employment to self-employment, beating a recession, and how to get a fiver from a stranger. There's so many insights in this episode. I think you guys are really going to enjoy it. So sit back, relax, and enjoy. Or if you're walking, walk and enjoy. Whatever way you're enjoying it, just enjoy it. Hello, Janet. Welcome to the podcast. How are you?
I'm well, Christine. Hello, and how are you?
I'm very, very good. I want to say thank you for coming on first, straight away, and also welcome again. So I just want to ask you first, just to tell the listeners a little bit about yourself, where you come from, what do you do, all those kind of fun stuff. And yeah, so fire away, Janet.
Good. Great. Well, I'm a chartered accountant by profession. I spent a good bit of my working life in the Netherlands, where I was working with KPMG, among others. And in 2003, I did a whole life swap. I moved back to Ireland from the Netherlands, moved from the middle of Amsterdam to the edge of a forest in the Glen of Amal. And I decided, you know what, why not throw accountancy over the wall and do something I've always loved, which is work with books. So I opened a bookshop in 2005 in Blessington. So that went well up to 2020 when the pandemic struck, but more of that later.
Well, to be fair, it's not fully stopped yet, has it?
Well, that's true. We, over the course of the 15 years, we built up a wonderful cohort of customers and book lovers and coffee lovers. And thanks to the wider community, we had a premises in the summer to do our now infamous school book service. And then we found somewhere else where we were welcomed in to do a pop-up shop up till Christmas. So that finally finished there at Christmas. And now I am in the process of selling off the remaining few hundred books that I have and making some headspace as to where to go from here. What's the best thing for me, for the bookshop, and for the book lovers that I've had the privilege of getting to know and love.
Would you said like you would have always wanted to start your own business, or was it kind of something that just happened when you made the big move across, or how did it happen?
Well, as you know, I grew up in a family business. My father was a master tailor and my mother started the ready-to-wear riding clothes aspect of the business. So from the time our heads cleared the counter, we were on call to help in the shop. Every August we had the horse show, which was a big thing in the calendar for our family business. Wasn't something I was always happy about. I remember once as a teenager, I wanted to go play with my friends on a Saturday when everybody else had to help get set up for the horse show. And my mother just quietly explained to me that this was a big thing for the financial stability of the family. And it made sense. So I got stuck in. So having grown up in a family business, starting your own business was never really an issue. It certainly was something that I enjoyed. But I think coming back from Holland and looking to see what I wanted to do, one of the most useful things I ever learned, I learned in my 20s on a management training course with KPMG. And we were asked, if resources were unlimited and if anything that you tried to do, you was guaranteed to succeed, what would you do? So unlimited resources, it will definitely succeed. What would you do? And that's been a mantra that I've used throughout my whole life. It cuts through all the ifs and the buts and it gets to the core of what it is in your heart of hearts you really want to do. So that's the process I did when I came back. And as what I want to do is work with books. I want to be a bookseller. And when you've identified what you want to do, then it's a question of, okay, resources are not unlimited. What are the limitations? How do I deal with them? How do I get around them? Because this is what I want to do. And it gets you working in a very practical way instead of looking at the problems as stopping you. You look at them as things to overcome. So that's how I went from being a chartered accountant to being a bookseller in a relatively short
Must have been
space
a
of
big
time.
change, I must say.
I suppose it was because initially, you know, you have for years you've had the security of a paycheck. But luckily enough, I was at a stage in my life when I was financially stable, so that wasn't as big an issue as it would have been back in my 20s. So I took full advantage of that.
It's funny that statement you said there about what would you do if like there was nothing stopping you, that kind of the shortened version of it. I've actually seen that come up a lot, and it's like a big thing about, you know, people dealing with fears, you know, things that they're just afraid will happen. But what would you do if there was nothing in the way? And did you find when you said you were going to you were going to open a bookshop, people were kind of like, why would you do that? Because, you know, with the age of technology and books may be perceived as being on the decline, do you find people were like, why would you do that now? Books aren't a thing anymore.
Well, luckily enough, I didn't ask too many people for their opinion because that's undoubtedly what they would have said. I would be fairly bullheaded. But because I had worked out that this was my dream, this is what I wanted to do, I was going to do it. So
Yeah.
I, you know, wasn't. Now I did do some groundwork. I did go and look at other bookshops in the area. I did speak to experienced booksellers. Now it was in 2005. It was the height of the Celtic Tiger, which was in some respects an unfortunate time to open up a business because rents were high, expectations were high. When I looked at other businesses, they had good turnovers, and it looked like there was enough for everybody and the party would last forever. And we all know that that wasn't the case.
Yeah.
So when we were a couple of years into it, it became clear that it couldn't survive as just as a bookshop. So in 2008, 2009, it was a question of up or out. I either had to close the bookshop or expand.
Yeah.
I'm a great believer, never waste a good recession. So what I did in 2009 was to move to a much larger premises. At the time, because it was a recession, it was a lot easier to get builders, electricians, plumbers. They were all looking for work. And we added a coffee shop to the bookshop. So the reasoning there was that while it did take a couple of years for the coffee shop to take off, it gave us the opportunity to become a destination where you would come to us because you could come in and have a cup of coffee, a bit of cake. Later on, you could have a bit of lunch and look at the books. So it gave people a reason to come to the bookshop. Also, the other bookshop was quite small, and it meant that Irish people are very shy going into a small place on their own to browse without buying something. So they'd rather not go in than go in, browse, and leave without buying something. So it meant
Very
that
true.
in the bigger premise, well, if there was even one other person sitting drinking a cup of coffee, somebody else would feel comfortable going in and having a browse around. It didn't feel like that they were on their own and that they had to buy something. So that was very good.
Oh yeah, especially like I remember set up in the shop, like it was kind of a separate entity. So even if you were just coming in for your coffee, you didn't feel like obliged. Does that make sense? If you felt like
Yeah.
having a
Oh,
wander in to have a look at the books, you could, but like you could sit there and have your coffee and have a meet up with someone and your cake and all, and then go off as well. So it was good to add the two elements to it.
absolutely. It was a big learning curve because I had no background in hospitality, so I had to find everything out for myself.
Yeah.
But it was well worth it. I think probably another one of my mantras would be to learn from others in your field. And as one person put it, if you open a cupboard, you can see what's there, but you can't see what's not there. So by going into other coffee shops, going into other bookshops, which I've done all over the world, you look to see how other people are doing what it is that you do and learn from the things that you're not, that they're doing better than you. And I've always presumed that other people were doing things better than I was, and that there was a lot to learn. And I think if you lose that, you lose the freshness in your business. You have to keep inventing and changing and yet staying the same, if that makes any sense. The people coming in know what they're going to get, but at the same time there's enough freshness and enough magic and enough change that they're energized every time they come to visit.
Did you find you were always kind
And
of
you do
looking for
that.
that to see if there was something that you could add to the business or use it as a tool to grow?
Yeah, and some things work and some things don't. I mean, you've got to expect that if you're in business, that maybe 4 out of every 10 things you try will work,
Yeah.
or will work now. Some things you try may not work now, but they may work in the future. And in that way, you just have to accept your mistakes. If you aren't trying things out and don't have some things not working, you're not going to have things that are working, if that makes some sense. So you have to just accept that you're going to make mistakes. You've got to try things out, and it's the way that you keep on moving forward.
I think that's the problem with most people, isn't it? Is that they never try because they're afraid of it not working out. And that's what stops people from trying in the first place.
Totally. I think the fear of rejection is the biggest issue we have, and probably even more so among us Irish. And again, in my time at KPMG on the training course, I learned something very useful about that, and that is to accept rejection, acknowledge rejection, acknowledge your fear of it, and do it anyway. When I was in the 80s in Amsterdam, I was sent on a training course on how to think outside the box. And the morning was fairly interesting, but at 12 o'clock, about 20 minutes before we were to break for lunch, the course leader said, I am going to ask you as a group or individually to do something immediately after lunch that you will not want to do. Everything within you will fight against this. You won't want to do it. You will just not want to do it. It's not illegal. It's not immoral, but still you will not want to do it. So we went on like this for about 20 minutes, really winding us up. What the hell could it be? And then just before the break, he said, immediately after lunch, you are to go out onto the streets of Amsterdam and you are to borrow a fiver from a complete stranger. You may not tell them why. You may not tell them that as part of your course, but you must borrow a fiver from a complete stranger. And then you were to spend that fiver on something you would never normally buy. Now, at the time, a fiver was 5 Dutch guilders, which was about €2 or €3. So it was a fairly small amount of money.
Yeah.
So it's like, okay, so I had the lunch, went out. I thought I'll go to the Brown Thomases of Amsterdam, which is called the Bijenkorf. And I went onto a floor and I saw a shop assistant. And I thought, okay, I'm going to have to ask this shop assistant to lend me a fiver. And it struck me that the fear I had of this complete stranger who I'd never seen before and would never see again, rejecting me, how strong that was and how much that was holding me back. So I took a deep breath, and I did. And the poor woman was very startled and very upset, which made me feel even worse. So she said, well, why don't you try customer services? So I went up to customer services on the top floor and noticed somebody else from my course having an argument with somebody behind the counter saying, but it's only a fiver. And the person behind the counter said, but I don't know you and I don't know anything about you. So I thought, okay, I can work with this. So went back onto the main street of Amsterdam, went into a record shop, picked out a fairly hippie looking young guy and said to him, what would I need to tell you about myself that would make you feel comfortable lending me 5 guilders until the end of the afternoon? And he looked at me and he said, well, your name, okay, address, okay. He said, I tell you what, if you give me your driving license, and I can hold on to your driving license until you give me back the fiver, I'd be happy to do it. So I thought, done deal. So I gave him my driving license and he gave me the fiver, and I went off, delighted with myself. So then I had to spend a fiver on something I would never normally spend it on. So I bought a hideous pair of male boxer shorts, hideous, and I kept the receipt. So I thought, okay, that's great. I'd never normally buy. So I went back. So out of the about 40 people on the course, about 10 had disappeared. They were so upset and so challenged with the idea of facing rejection in total strangers, never mind people you might know, that they just left. They ran away.
Yeah.
And of the remaining 30, about 5 of us had actually managed to borrow the fiver. So I was delighted myself. And I thought I was, top of the class. And he said, well, what did you buy that you wouldn't normally buy? And I said, well, I bought a hideous pair of gents boxer shorts, which I can't wait to bring back. And he said, well, why didn't you buy something you'd like? And I said, yeah, but for 5 guilders, that wouldn't stop me. He said, well, would you normally buy 10 bars of chocolate in one go? And I said, oh, no. So there were 2 lessons there for me. The most important one is that rejection is a great fear, but it's, if you allow your fear of rejection to rule you, your comfort zone stays very small.
Yeah.
And when you push that out a little bit, when you have the courage to risk rejection and get rejected, which is, it's crap, it's not nice, but you've expanded your comfort zone, and then you can go a bit further. And the fear of rejection or the nastiness of being rejected never goes away, because you're constantly pushing out your comfort zone. So you're constantly doing something that carries a fear of rejection and may work or may not. But it does mean that you get an awful lot more space in your life. You have a lot more experiences.
Yeah.
And I certainly would say that if anybody wanted to start their own business, acknowledge the fear of rejection. Just accept that it's there and you can get through it, and it's not going to kill you. It really isn't. There is a book called Help Me, which I have in my shelf, which is about this woman who decided during one year, each month she was going to try a different self-help book. And one of the self-help books was about being rejected and asking for something that you felt you weren't going to get. And she was amazed at how many times that she asked for something that she actually got it. She found it particularly difficult to get rejected. And in taking that risk and in asking people for something, for example, she was on a night out and the band took a break. And she went up and asked the guitarist, could she have a go for his guitar? Utterly convinced that this guy would say, absolutely not.
Touch me guitar.
And he said, sure. Sit down, absolutely, sit down. And he showed her a few things on the guitar and they had a great chat and she had a brilliant night. But she never in her wildest dreams would have tried that if she hadn't trying to be rejected. So so it shows there's a lot of positive to come from that. I think we fall into the trap as well of looking at other people that are working with their fear of rejection and say, oh, well, it's easy for them. She's got such a hard neck. She'll try anything. And that's not the case. They're just a little bit further down the line than you are in taking that risk, in taking the risk of people saying no.
It's like that analogy of the iceberg, isn't it? Like everyone sees the iceberg on top and they're like, oh, look at them, they're successful, they did great, but they don't see everything underneath. where they spend all the time
No.
working up to it and building up their confidence and going out there and not giving up. Like, and it's very easy to forget that when you're looking at someone who's successful, isn't it?
Yeah, it's about having the courage to sit down and say, ooh, that was horrible. That was horrible. When your man or your woman said no, or when so-and-so didn't like my podcast or didn't like what I did, that felt crap. Did it kill me? No. Will I do it again? Yeah. That's really what it's about. Cilla Black, I don't know if you ever heard of her. She was a
I'm not
famous
that young.
UK presenter.
Oh, I know
Yeah,
Cilla Black.
she suffered from stage fright. All her life, she
Oh,
suffered from
really?
stage fright. She would almost be physically sick before she had to go out to present that show.
Oh,
And she
wow.
did it week after week, and people didn't know that about her. But every time she did a show, she had to push through that fear barrier and to be the person that she could be, which was a national treasure.
That's amazing. You wouldn't know that when she was on, that she
No,
had such
no,
struggles
no.
getting on the stage in the first place.
What it comes down to is the old thing that you can please some of the people some of the time, you can please all of the people. No, you can please some of the people all of the time. You can please all of the people some of the time, but you cannot please all the people all the time. It's
Yeah.
impossible. The more you try to be likable or to please everybody all the time, the more that you're going to upset yourself. You can't. Sometimes you just have to accept, okay, so many people, these people didn't like it, but other people did. So there you go. I'm going to keep going.
There's a good quote I heard. Brian Keane said, I think his mom says it, and it's a real Irish one. It says, you're not going to be everyone's cup of tea, but you're someone's shot of whiskey."
There you go. I love it. I love it. I
It's
love
good
it.
one, isn't it?
Yeah,
Like,
and I
it's so
think
true, and it is a very Irish way of saying it.
yeah, I would 100% prefer to be somebody's shot of whiskey.
Yeah, definitely. It's more fun, isn't it?
It surely is. I think that's a brilliant quote.
Yeah.
Definitely must remember that. Another thing that I learned along my journey in business was that you have to stick your head above the parapet and ask for what you need. As I said, in the first couple of years of the coffee shop, we were finding our feet. I was learning about hospitality. And 2012, 2013, it became very clear we were coming out of recession. We needed to be a destination. People needed to want to come to the Blessington bookstore, so they needed to know about it. And the best way of knowing about it was to get national publicity. Well, how do you do that? So how we did that was by applying for awards.
Oh, okay. So
We're good at
that's,
what we do. Tell
yeah.
people about it. So starting in 2014, every year, even if sometimes the application went in at about 2 minutes to midnight, every year I applied for the best independent bookshop of the year, a British run by the Booksetters magazine in the UK. And from 2014 up to 2020, we were shortlisted every year as Best Independent Bookshop in Ireland, and we won. We were regional winners in 2014 and 2016,
Yeah.
and got to put on the good frock and to go to Park Lane in the UK and represent Ireland. Now, we didn't win the overall Best UK in Ireland, but to have won the Irish Regional Award was
Yeah.
great.
That's brilliant.
And in 2014, we applied for the Small Firms Association Outstanding Small Business Award,
Yeah.
and we were highly commended. So that was a great result. And in 2019 and 2020, we were shortlisted as Best Children's Bookshop in the UK and Ireland. We were the only Irish bookshop in both years to make the shortlist. So you have to sing your own praises. There's modesty has a time and a place. But I think if you're in business and you want to build up your business, you need to broadcast what you're doing and do it in the way by winning awards and being shortlisted. It was a good news story, which people love. They love to hear about small business doing well. So it was a great way of getting free PR and a real feel-good factor about it. It wasn't, come to us, buy our coffee, buy our books. It's we're good at what we do.
Yeah.
And we're not afraid to say it.
How did you come across that idea, or was it like researching ways you could grow the business more, or did you just decide, you know what, my bookshop's great, I'm gonna apply for this award? Which way?
As I think of most things, you come across them by accident and pretend
Yeah.
they were strategy. Our local AIB bank, because I think they were sponsoring that particular year, 2014, with the Small Firms Association.
Yeah.
Our local bank manager, and now, do you know what? It could have been a circular letter that they sent to everybody, but they sent me a letter saying, would you consider applying for the Small Firms Association awards in the Outstanding Small Business category? And I thought, well, why not?
Yeah.
Why not me?
Good point.
You know, and there it comes back to the fear of rejection. If you pour your heart and soul into the application and they say, no, you're not good enough. You didn't make the short list. You would have felt, oh, am I not as good as I thought? You know, it would have been a sit down and have a little cry moment. But luckily enough, I didn't get to experience that. I got the upside of being shortlisted and then being highly commended among the 5 finalists, and learning an awful lot in the process. So that particular year, they came in with the email came in about to booksellers all over the UK and Ireland, apply for Independent Bookseller of the Year. And I had all the stuff ready from the SFA. So I said, well, okay, I'll send it in. And we were shortlisted. And we actually won. We were regional winners in 2014.
Yeah.
So that made it clear that that's something I should be doing every year.
Yeah.
So every February religiously I would apply for it. And then last year I thought, well, you know, we have a very big children's section and they have a best children's book selling section. So why not go for that? So it was very good to get that. Last year was 2019 was great because again, I got to put on the good dress and to go to a gala dinner in Park Lane, and just beside Hyde Park, with some of the best authors in the world present, and all dressed up, you know, being nationally, and it was an amazing experience. So that in itself, I mean, we weren't overall winners, but just to be there. 2020 was a little bit sad because it was virtual, and I sat in my tracksuit on the couch watching it because I kind of knew we hadn't won. They hadn't phoned us beforehand, so it wasn't quite the same. And at that point, our bookshop had unfortunately closed. So yeah, that came to the closing of the bookshop. As luck would have it, my 10 years lease was up in 2019, and I was in the process of negotiating a new lease.
Yeah.
The landlord was looking for a 35% increase in rent, which I wasn't happy about. So we were toing and froing. We'd actually outgrown where we were, so I was putting a lot of work into an alternative premises and an even bigger tourist attraction when the pandemic hit, and that really proved, well, look, you know, tourism is not going to come back for at least 2 years, so expanding is not an option, and it would not be commercially viable to sign a new 10-year lease when we have no idea when we could be operating the way we had done in the past. And I will say that a small business owner is like the load-bearing wall in the middle of a house. Nobody sees how much work you do to keep everything standing, unless you don't do it. And looking to this year and possibly the next year or two, the weight on my shoulders to keep the business going, there was a risk that would become unbearable, and it just didn't make sense. So it was with a heavy heart that I made the decision to close in May 2020. So yes, I've moved the business online to the extent that I'm selling off the books that I still have online at very good prices at blessingtonbooks.com.
Make sure
look
you get
now
that.
And look often. So we have some really, really good books there. I still have book selling in my blood. I still enjoy the creativity, the extraordinary miracle that every year new authors all over the world put the words they know into an order that nobody else has thought of before and create this amazing new book. You know, it just seems like there's no edge to the universe. There seems to be no edge to creative genius when it comes to book, and I find that inspiring. So in the course of this year, I'm going to see what role I can play in that in the future and where the business could go. But I'm able to do that having made a tough decision in May of last year. Had I not made the decision then, I would still be struggling with serious commercial responsibilities. So,
and sometimes you have to be able to make those decisions in business as well, isn't it? It's better to, in this case, selling off the few books from the bedroom than absolute, like, nearly crippling yourself, having to pay rent for a shop that you can't open.
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, perseverance is very important when you're in business, but there's a time and place for it. And definitely this was a case where discretion was the better part of valor. And so my head made a decision in May. Physically, we made that happen. And sometime this year, I'm hoping my soul will catch up with the whole process. And, I'll decide what I need to do next. Maybe I've reached a time in my life that I'm going to have to start reading all the books that are in my house, because I'm reaching the unfortunate conclusion that even if I start tomorrow and do nothing else for the rest of my natural days, I still couldn't read all the books that I have in my house. So,
well, that's a challenge,
I'm
though.
going to. Well, I suppose it is, except that I keep on bringing in new books. So
there's always a new one. Could you be tempted to join the list of authors to create these wonderful books? Could that be the next?
Oh, I most certainly will. But will I publish it? That is the question. I think you must initially write for yourself.
Yeah.
You write because you want to write. You write because you want to tell your story, and everybody should do that. Everybody has their story, and everybody should do it if they have the time and the space to do it. Not everybody should publish it. That is undoubtedly the case, because when you write your story, you're writing your subjective story.
Yeah.
And that's good, and it's very therapeutic, and it's very interesting, and it's a lovely thing to do. But only a certain number of people have the skill to make their subjective story something that objectively somebody who knows nothing about them or the background can pick up that story and read it and enjoy it and relate to it and have some empathy for it. And it's that skill set that we don't all have. So yes, everybody should write a book, but don't publish it unless it's in that particular cohort. So enough I know about book selling. If I ever do write a book, I'll put it away for a couple of months, and then I'll try and pick it up as I would have done any new book coming into my shop and saying, could I honestly recommend this to another book lover?
Yeah.
And if I can, I might do something with it, and if I couldn't, I will just quietly leave it there to be thrown out in the future when I am no more.
Maybe be kept, you never know. I think that is everything pretty much that I had to ask you. There's some brilliant insights in there as well, by the way. They're really, really, really valuable. I think that a lot of people get a lot of value from as well. And once again, just remind everyone who's listening where they can find you, where they can get books off you, because there are still some left, and everything else that you want to.
So go to blessingtonbooks.com. And it's a flat rate delivery for $5.95. So the more you spend, the more you save. Don't worry if you're finding it difficult to read in the current pandemic. I must admit, I'm finding it very hard myself. So my focus in the next month will be to pick out the books that make it easy to read. I think it's hard to have the concentration. We're living through a very challenging time, and to remember to allow that to be. It is what it is, and things will get better. Whatever works for you. If an audio works better, do that. Do an audiobook at the moment. One book that I really enjoyed this year, Star of the North by D.B. John, because that was a real sucked you in from the first page. So what I will be doing over the coming weeks is finding some more books that really make it easy for you to pick up and to read and to get stuck into. Because when you're reading a book, your body, your mind, your soul, your imagination are all in sync. You're completely focused on that one thing. And that really is a great relaxation for the mind and for the body. And that, I think, is what we need more of. So that'll be my task for the coming weeks.
It's going to be asking you for the updates on what books we need to be reading.
Yeah, they may arrive in the post, Christine. You never know. You never know.
On the website later. Would you say you're more of a fiction person than a non-fiction?
Totally. I have to be very careful how I say this, but I would find that 80% of male readers and a certain percentage of female readers are more non-fiction. They like facts and figures. If they read fiction, they want it to be historical so that they feel they learn something for it, or complete fantasy so that it's, you know, something way out. 80% of women, if I may dare say that, and a certain percentage of men will read books that are more about relationships and people, and they empathize with people, or they see reflections of themselves in the characters. And it's more about what goes on between the people than what happens in the plot. So you know, it's some people like plot. That's very important. If nothing happens in the book, they can't stick with it. Some people like language. They love a poetic use of language. And some people really love character, where they empathize with somebody. And the books that I try to pick out as a bookseller are one that most people will like, that there is a sufficient in it to suit everybody in the audience. So that's it. So however, I will keep an eye on the site as my finish unpacking the boxes from the pop-up shop and get back to what I really love doing, which is reading and recommending books. I'll be putting up recommendations on the site that hopefully will suit, be something there to suit everybody.
That's brilliant. Yeah, that's it's always good. Recommendations, that's what you want. You really prefer a recommendation over reading the blurb on the back. Someone said it's good, you might have a go.
Absolutely. And I'm hoping that people that do buy books from me will get back to me and let me know how they got on with them. So that's another thing on my list, is to email people that have bought books and ask them how they got on and what they thought of them, so that I can publish those reviews on the website. It's
a really good idea as well, getting actual readers. Nicer to get reviews from normal people as opposed to critics, for want of a better. I think some of the best books and films are not critically acclaimed, so.
Absolutely.
But so thank you for coming on to be interviewed today. Just for everyone who is listening, you can still find me as ever on Instagram. My name on that is @ChrissyHFitness, and also you will find me on TikTok @ChrissyHFit. And thanks again, everyone, for listening in, and thank you again, Janet, for coming on.
My pleasure. Lovely to speak with you.
Thank you again for listening to Why Not. Please hit that subscribe button or leave a review. And if you have any suggestions or feedback, feel free to hit me up on social media.